Patterns, a Mandala game for two. This is a two-player abstract game. It is abstract but with a generic theme of mandala making, and if anything else, it's a pretty confrontational positional game, so that confrontational element, again, if anything, seems to me to go against the vague sense of peace that I associate with mandalas. The board is this like nice cloth based board representing two balls where we have these small tokens and a single token representing the colorful sand that we will use to make mandalas. Each player has one. Each player also has a track, such as this one, with 6 number tokens of their color. We have purple versus white, and we will soon see how that works. The purpose of the game is to score more points than the opponent. Players will alternate taking turns, and when it is your turn, you must take an action if you can. Matter of fact, if a player cannot take any actions legally, that triggers the end of the game. The other player still may be able to take some actions, not all, but then ultimately, when nothing can be done, you score points, and the player with the most points wins the game. You will establish and expand groups during the game, and you will do it with the one token that will be available on your board. And you need to establish a group before you can expand it, so we're going to look at that action first. To establish a group, you take the token which is in your bowl, and you place it anywhere on the board that has the tokens on the empty side. This is the full, this is empty. The rulebook says like face up, face down. I can never really figure out which one was what, which one was which. So full, empty. So you take a token and you switch it with an empty token that is on the board anywhere. Then you take the lowest value of these numerical tokens available and you place it on it. And then you take one of those small tokens from your board and you place it under the printed number on the board. So now I know blue for me is 1 and I have established that group. Now my opponent goes and they decide to establish a red group there, so they switch it. This goes to their board, to their bowl. Now they establish that, and this will go where they have their 1. Up there. See? I'm not lying to you. Now there is, because I switched blue for red, there is a red in my bowl, and I can use that one to establish a red group, and I decide to do so. This goes into my bowl, becomes full, and now that is my 2, and the red goes in the 2 there. So that's how you establish groups. You can also choose to expand a group that you already have. To expand a group, there are 2 ways to do it. One is you can flip to the full side an empty token, which is orthogonally adjacent to a group that you already have. For example, my turn, maybe I flip this one that way. My opponent decides to expand that group of theirs, and then I decide to expand this group of mine, and then it's back to them. Also, when you have groups, they cannot merge. So if, for example, this was the situation and the 2 players both have a red group there, now no one can flip that one face up because that would cause those 2 groups to merge, and that's just weird. Also, you can only have 1 group per color. So one way of expanding a group, flip a token of the matching color orthogonally adjacent to your group from empty to full. Another way to do it, I need to say, you know what, I'm going to establish a yellow group now right there with the token that I have, and I do that because I said that I would. And I'm going to flip and flip stuff. Now, let's do that. Another way of expanding a group is to play a token of the color of the group, say I'm expanding yellow, to play it again orthogonally adjacent to a group, replacing an empty token. Once the tokens have become full, they cannot be moved again. And now I'm going to establish a green. So your opportunities for action will, of course, decrease as the game goes by because players keep moving things around and ultimately turn empty into full and they cannot be interacted with again. I'm gonna flip that one. And oh, my opponent decides to establish a green group right here. See now, because that one is full, the green group cannot be expanded quite as much. So that's the idea, that the board will become more and more cluttered with groups that will expand as much as possible. But there'll be a time where, say, you have a token of a group that you cannot expand anymore because it's surrounded by full tokens. And you cannot start another group because you already have a group of that color. And that would be one way, for example, in which you will be unable to play the game. I mean, to play your move, trigger at the end of the game. Once the end of the game is triggered, the other player can flip tokens if they have any that are eligible for that, but they cannot swap tokens from their bowl to the board anymore. When the game reaches its end, you're gonna count victory points. And the value of the tokens in a group is equal to the number printed on it. So printed on that token. So for example, this group here, green for me in this game is worth 4 points apiece. So that group is worth 8 points. The first one that I put down, blue, only worth 1 point per token. So that group is worth 2 points. This group, 2 points per token. So that's the idea, is that you have an incentive of maybe not wasting too much time expanding that group value 1 or 2, unless you're using it to block somebody else's expansion, but you want to have, a lot, possibly a large group of pieces that are worth 6 points each, but that will be late in the game because, well, there are at least six of your groups on the board right now, and well, 6 of yours, some of the opponent. So that is the paradox. The earlier groups are not worth much, but the later groups where the tokens are worth a lot are harder to expand. This is an abstract positional game, and because of that, it has a very classical feel to it, meaning similar, the kind of feel that you have from traditional games handed down to us from tradition, rather than games from the modern hobby, which are the ones that at least I tend to prefer, and possibly if you're watching my video blog, you also tend to prefer. So that's the caveat. It's a solid, clean, simple design, but at least for me, it feels too classical, too dry, too abstract to satisfy me. As soon as I start playing it, I want to play something more like Azul, for example. Just thinking about a game that feels abstract but has a little more to it. Here's like pure maneuvering and positioning to expand your scoring areas and closing and sealing the areas of the opponent. Because of that, this is a remarkably confrontational game. And it's a confrontational game in which, well, all the cards are laid out there, all the factors, all the elements are visible. There's no secret information, which of course will lead to analysis paralysis and potentially to over-analysis, because you can really see that in order to win, you need to be able to see 3-4 moves in advance, because by placing this token and taking that token, and that means that's the one token I can place later. So I need to make sure I'm not locked out of the game early on. But again, well, I take the red. Oh, I can place red, but the only place where I can place red gives me a yellow, and now yellow gets me stuck. So you're constantly looking ahead a couple of moves. And again, if you play checkers or chess, actually that's the example I had in mind, that's precisely what you want to do. In that sense, you have a deterministic, open, perfect information, abstract game that feels precisely like those traditional games along those lines. And I don't often play those games, and so that's why this game is not to my taste. I can't say it's bad. I think it's well designed. It doesn't meet my taste, and it feels, again, too calculating and too oppositional for myself. But if you saw what you see, what you saw, if you like what you saw in this video, I think that this kind of game can have a market. The production is very nice, the rules are well laid out, everything is well produced. Again, just too confrontational, abstract, and direct for my taste, but my taste is not the only one that exists.